everyone, I'm Sarah Swan, Certified Financial Planner and Wealth Manager at Howe Rusling. We realize sometimes that prospective clients or people who don't currently work with an investment advisor don't know what they don't know. They have great intentions and have done a good job saving for their future, but there are some very common issues we see when it comes to their investments or finances generally. I thought I'd cover them today in case any might apply to you, so that you can get an idea of things we aim to clean up right away when our new clients come on board with us at Howe Rusling. First up, investments that are not properly diversified or imprudent allocation-wise for a person's risk tolerance. Look, I can't tell you how often we see that a person has a portfolio with no strategy around what's invested in and why. They may be under-diversified, meaning, for example, 20% of their portfolio is in one company's stock that has been growing over the past 20 years, and they haven't touched it. Or they may even be over-diversified. Let's say they own 100 mutual funds, all of which have expensive underlying fees associated with them. And there are so many in one portfolio that their impact is diluted, and the whole approach is just clunky, frankly. Maybe they're a 75-year-old on a fixed income, believing they own bonds as a safer relative investment, and yet when we look at it, in reality what they own are extremely risky junk bonds at risk of defaulting on their repayments. Or maybe they're a younger person in their accumulation phase with no imminent needs for cash and yet not nearly enough stock exposure to be able to take advantage of the long-term risk premium that stocks offer to people with a long time horizon in front of them. In summary, we help our clients diversify their investments to spread risk out and potentially enhance returns. And it's not a formula purely based on a person's age. A proper investment allocation policy should take into account many things: risk tolerance, time horizon, liquidity needs, growth requirements, tax considerations, and any other unique preferences or restrictions. Another common issue we see is a lack of consolidation across lots of different accounts out there. Now, this one isn't surprising. It makes sense that people have money at different institutions or banks. For instance, anybody who has ever switched jobs has also switched 401k plans, potentially. Therefore, they're likely to have old accounts hanging out there, maybe a couple 401ks from years ago, a Roth IRA they set up when they were young, a brokerage account at Vanguard, an IRA at Fidelity. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but inherent in that is that it's very hard to have a global view of the overall picture. How is all of it invested? How does it all fit together? Consolidation not only helps with asset allocation, or knowing how much you actually have in stocks versus bonds versus cash, but it also helps from an estate planning perspective. Any of us who've ever had a parent or sibling pass away understands the complexity of unwinding a person's estate. And the more streamlined and efficient that process is, the better for everybody involved from a psychological and financial perspective. Now, switching gears, it is alarming to us how often people do not have beneficiaries on their accounts or have outdated beneficiaries listed. All investment accounts should have individual beneficiaries selected on them, whether 401ks or IRAs or brokerage accounts. A beneficiary just means that if you die, those accounts automatically and immediately become the property of the individuals that you've named, without having to be subject to the probate process. The excuse we hear of people being unsure about who to pick is not an acceptable one in our opinion. You can select more than one, you can select primary and contingent beneficiaries, and you can change them at any time for free. Not electing beneficiaries results in way too many potential negative outcomes. They can ultimately lose value from the expense of the probate process, and they also face harsher rules from the IRS about timeframes for distributing the funds, which often increases a beneficiary's tax liability. Beyond making sure that you have beneficiaries on your accounts, we help our clients pursue an estate plan that includes a will, a power of attorney, and healthcare directives to ensure that their assets are distributed according to their wishes and with minimized tax implications. Next up, we see lots of annuities or life insurance policies that really don't align with people's needs or goals. Now, we don't sell insurance at Howe Rusling. We actually don't sell any products at all, which is why we are a fiduciary that you can trust has your best interest in mind when we assess your financial picture. But many of us are certified financial planners, and therefore we can make an assessment of what level of life insurance coverage and disability insurance we believe you should have, if any. And the reason I say if any is because from our standpoint, not everyone needs to pay for life insurance. And there is such thing as self-insuring at a certain point in your life. People are often sold life insurance and annuities on the premise of guarantees and safety. It is, at the end of the day, insurance. But there is a lot of complexity and expense involved that we like to make sure people are very aware of. Another issue we see often is people having too much money in savings versus money in investments. Remember that savings and investments are not created equal. Both are important, but they're not equal. Savings accumulate, are not spent, and are not subject to risk and therefore fluctuations in value. But investments, on the other hand, are accumulated, not spent, and are subject to risk and fluctuations in value in order to have the potential to grow over the long term. Both are important, like I said, but the goal of growing the value of your dollars to hopefully outpace inflation, or the fact that things get more expensive every year, that is tremendously aided by risk investments as opposed to just zero risk saving. We model out what we believe is an appropriate amount for a person or a couple to keep in savings as an emergency fund, and what amount in excess of that would be better served by being invested for long-term growth. Investing is inherently risky because the value of your money can go up and it can go down. But the philosophy behind that risk is that investors hope to be rewarded over the long term by taking on that risk. Lastly, we find that clients have a need for better budgeting in order to not outlive their portfolio assets. Some people need some coaching about not having accumulated enough to be able to afford life in retirement when they are no longer growing their wealth or earning an income. People may feel they're living within their means from an income versus expenses standpoint, but the piece that our financial planning process helps shed additional light on is whether enough has actually been accumulated in savings and investments to be able to sustain their life into old age, especially when we consider that there are very unforeseen large expenses such as long-term care late in life. Making changes to habits now when you're still earning an income will provide better flexibility for life when you are on a fixed income. And while some would rather keep their heads buried in the sand, which we have empathy for, we find there's nothing more motivating and helpful than future cash flow projections that show that you may need to make some adjustments now to be able to afford the life that you'd like to have when you're retired. All right, so I could go on with this list with more nitty-gritty examples of issues that we help clean up for new clients. But these overarching themes are the significant ones that we see. If you think any of these applies to your situation, it might be worth sitting down with a fiduciary financial advisor who can weigh in with some sound advice. We're always here to help. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Street Smarts with Howe Rusling.